Hello, hello, hello. I am RexGoDragon. Welcome to the Get Wrecked Summer Splashdown podcast alongside with Mark Hames.
Mark Hames now rebranded as Doulos, that is.
Ah, yes. I have uh, really been paying attention to the podcast recently, but yeah, you have rebranded yourself as Duos, as you mentioned last week. Ever since you're just rebranding away from Arcanes, you're going to this different name away from your previous defeat.
Yeah, it's true. And it was pretty funny because as soon as I changed my name, right, I hit Diamond immediately. And then so it's just like I'm a completely different person now, you do?
Yeah, and let's go right ahead into these first game. So, do you want to do the platinum or the diamond games first?
All right. So today we have 4 platinum games and 2 diamond games to cover. So let's go ahead and go through the platinum.
All right, so let's go with the first one being GSM versus MG Blaze.
Okay, so this one was a 2-0. Um, I'm still looking to see if I can pull the match history up, but it's taking just a little bit. But GSM, after we saw them lose to Return the Middlesticks, we were kind of questioning them for a bit, right? We were like, does this team really belong in, like towards that top 2 finish? And there was a close match against Return of the Middlesticks, to be fair. But this week they came out swinging with a 2-0 against MG Blaze. MG Blaze was the team who we had a lot of question marks for going early into the split. They had a 1-2 against Glacial Rising Eagles, 2-0 against Hidden Weave Village, and then last week 2-1 against Divine Ascension Black. But unfortunately, they just weren't able to even find a single victory in the match against GSM.
Yeah, it is true. I was there to live cast that Return to Middlesticks and GSM game, and we saw, you Return to Middlesticks said that they were going to just plow right through of GSM, but GSM did put up a pretty substantial fight, not being able to outperform how Return to Middlesticks plans to really dominate this bracket for Platinum. And let's see right here. This is which side is which? Sorry.
Yeah, so GSM won both games. So the winning side on
Okay.
both games is GSM.
All right. So right here. All right. So I'm getting a little feedback. So I'm hearing myself. So if I talk really slowly, that's because I don't want to jump over my words. But so if we look at some of these games, we have looks like it did an excellent job in this early parts of the game. Or not early parts of the game, but pulled it around at the end. We seen it or really solid score along with Cassiopeia, almost getting to that full build point where it sits items.
Yeah, and there's a lot of signature picks here from GSM. It seems like that's kind of the idea that they're going with for a lot of these team compositions this split, is just putting their players on a lot of like their comfort picks. So we have the Jarvan for Water Bear, Cassiopeia for Midnight Slushy, Morgana, Ezreal for Boosted Asian, and Ari Panda. Something interesting here is putting Jack Love's Lamps on the Irelia, right? Jack Love Lamp historically has been a weak side player, and putting him on the Irelia is pretty big change for GSM. Trusting him to be able to win into the Gangplank matchup, as Irelia is able to kind of outmaneuver and I guess just out. He has a little bit more skill expression than Gangplank in the lane. Has more opportunity to make plays and paid off, as you can see. Jackal's Lamp having an 8-1-5 score line towards the end of the game. Pretty big CS numbers as well, and really just carrying his team throughout the entire game.
Mm-hmm. As a Halo fan pointed out in the chat, the Gangplank building Lucidity Boots is a bit of a question mark with the Triforce and the Essence Reaver, so already capped out on the CDR, and then also having the Lucidity Boots.
Yeah, it is a little bit question mark, but maybe he meant to like sell his boots later because getting that cooldown early isn't the worst thing. but it's also not like a super great thing. So once you have those Lucidity boots and once you cap out on CDR, then you could probably switch those for something else. But I feel as if his team wasn't feeling it that game. You can see the 2-7 Syndra. Pretty unfortunate. The A8 Lee Sin means that he is the only engaged for the team, as you can see, and he paid for it every single time.
Yeah, as we see right there, I think both junglers perform pretty well. Blue side doing a pretty good job at keep at this dragon control, as Vid mentioned in the previous week. Whoever gets the first dragon typically gets the second one about like 6 minutes later. This is more of an 8 minute difference. But yeah, they both got those first dragons, but uh, we have J4 there, seeing that he has 22 assists, alongside of still keeping up pretty well with these objectives, getting that Rift Herald alongside of the Nets Dragons, and eventually that Baron too. So, really well played by both sides. Jungler trying to keep up with the, keeping up with these objectives, and then alongside of doing a couple ganks. But it looks like J4 just outperformed the Lee Sin just by a bit in terms of usefulness for his team.
Yeah, and Lee Sin's one of the champions where you have to be super proactive early, right? Especially when you're playing into someone like a Jarvan who's going to scale into these team fights a lot better than you, especially with Waterbear building the tank Jarvan with the Randuin's Omen, Cinder Hulk. He's just going to be pretty tanky throughout the entire game while the Lee Sin is the main engage. So he kind of has to be really proactive early. You can see that the early dragons went over to his team, but the gold lead just started slowly going in favor of the other team due to GSM skirmishing early. And it was just pretty unfortunate for Lee Sin, wasn't able to really get going in the early game. Started to just fall behind in terms of scaling against the Jarvan. But I really like the team composition that GSM has drafted here into into the enemy composition just because they have a lot more options in terms of their team fight. I feel like the team comp of Blue Side is very one dimensional here. They really just want to scale. The Sindra wasn't able to get online, and they didn't really have anybody they could delete. It seems like since Morgana does have the black shield, and then Cassio had the barrier as well. They had a lot of survivability on their team, and then lasagnas to round it out for both of those.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, in terms for the side of MG Blaze, they don't really have a way to come back into the game other than just scaling out. They don't have, they have the Lulu and the Sivir, which is a very strong combo, alongside of Syndra being able to the Scattered Weak on top of her just full combo. But they don't really have a lot of that strong pick potential that GSM has, where they can really find a good pick with the Casio ulti, or even Aurelia just hitting a stun on top of an ulti, or just a Morgana bind. Doing an excellent job for their team to, even if they're behind or if they're ahead, just really push that lead even further.
Yeah, and then we move on to the second game, which is a pretty similar story for GSM, right? We can see the gold leads start to just go in their favor and then kind of just run over MG Blaze yet again.
Yeah, we see some. I mean, it's pretty good matches right here. I still have the graph kind of trying to load in here, not really showing up, but uh, we see quite a bit of fight coming out from MG Blaze, especially from their bot laner, seeing that the Sivir is really doing excellently well as Zach looks like he's doing plenty more ganks, but it doesn't seem like he was able to transition that into a win for his team.
Yeah, and I like the adaptation that MG Blaze here had in this the second game. It just really wasn't enough to overcome the skill difference that GSM had over MG Blaze, but I feel like a lot of this came down to the mid lane. You can kind of see all of the carry potential that Midnight Slushy has in his champion, just kind of that late game powerhouse, and him making this plays later in the game compared to the mid laner of MG Blaze, who fell behind kind of in both games. You can see here they ended the game at 129 CS at 31 minutes, which is really, really low. So if MG Blaze really wants to pick it up later in the season, then mid lane has to step up in some form, or then you just need to find some other way to play the game.
Yeah, rather than having some of these like more aggressive mid laners such as the LeBlanc, uh, the Syndra was a kind of nice idea, but wasn't able to really necessarily scale up and be at a point where it was really that useful. So hopefully MG Blazes take their losses with some learning from this experience and figuring out where they need to work on. As you said, the mid lane is a pretty good spot to start looking at, as well as maybe a little bit of this top lane, seeing that, uh, both in both cases, I believe the top laner didn't exactly win out against Jack Love's Lamp on these more aggressive top laners.
And I would love to see something else other than the LeBlanc, other than the Syndra here in the mid lane, something that would just scale nicely with the team. As you can see, it's just kind of a weird pick into enemy team composition and doesn't really synergize with his team as well. He kind of needs to pick a big team fighting pick, maybe like a Galio or even like a Cassidon, like Midnight Slush he picked here, to be able to synergize with his team just a little bit more and kind of get those mid to late game team fights because they did get it was a pretty close game in terms of kills. I believe you can see that GSM has outmacroed them pretty heavily, getting 3 dragons, getting that Baron as well, and getting that early Rift Herald. So it was just pretty difficult for MG Blaze to come into this game, as you can see, and I really attribute that to LeBlanc. They started to fall behind, and once LeBlanc falls behind, it's very difficult for her to get back into the game just because of the nature of her kit.
hmm So let's go ahead and go on to this next matchup. We have Return to Millstit's Platinum versus Business Time.
And this was the match that everybody kind of expected to have the quick 2-0, right? It was a team towards the very top of the standings, clear first place, undefeated, versus a team towards the very bottom of the standings. You can see that in the first game here that it was a very quick victory. It was 16 minutes and 42 seconds. Um, Not a perfect game, but it was really, really fast. And it looks like it was a surrender because you only have how many towers? 3 towers taken. So business time just didn't want to play this game anymore. Kind of got tilted a little bit. But we can talk about the draft a little bit here. So Return the Mill Stakes picks. Um, n- uh, it's tough to say because Kane is a really strong power pick this patch. The rest of their composition doesn't synergize too heavily. You kind of had a lot of engage options, but not a lot of damage or sustained damage if the Ash were to fall behind. The problem is Business Time just couldn't target the bot lane hard enough, right? And once the Echo started to get snowballing a little bit, it was very difficult for them to match the roam of the Echo and match that playmaking potential that X Grace has on the pick.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty interesting to see. As you said, Kane is a pretty strong power jungler right now. And then with a lot of their picks, it seemed like the Echo was there mainly for this early mid game, but still pretty useful in the late game. If they got to that point, seeing that he is 5-0, I'm sure he was able to bring that influence of all those kills out into other lanes. Where you see in this later part before the surrender, he did go down towards the bot lane, got a triple kill off of that, which I'm sure just kind of uh, plummeted towards this inevitable surrender that unfortunately business time decided on doing.
Yeah, so then you look at the second game, and it was a much closer game. It ended up going to 32 minutes. Still a pretty significant gold lead towards the end of the game in favor of Return the Mill Sticks and 0 towers for business time. So they just really, really had a tough time getting into this game, but a lot of adaptation for them. The Fiddlestick support is pretty memey right now. Definitely meant to be a jungle pick. And playing that support, especially into the Misfortune Braum, is basically a death sentence.
Especially with how strong Misfortune is, and then has a little bit of synergy with that Braum concussive blows. We see the mid lane was a little bit of a different story. We had a pretty strong mid laner, Renekton, doing quite a bit of work against this Ari, but not being able to really get the reach that lit. Well, since Renekton is such a mid game type of champion, once they got to this late game with an Ornn, with the Ari, with the misfortune, it was kind of wraps from there, especially with having a 12 and 3 Ornn. Managed to get to that level of 13 much faster than normal.
You can see for the draft this game that Ikato did get his hands on the Kane again, and they gave Vibon the Ornn again, which is kind of two of really strong picks for Return of the Middlesticks. So it's kind of a question mark for the draft of business time. They thought the Vladimir could maybe match into the Ornn, kind of scale up as Ornn. Does a little less damage really since he is a tank or is supposed to be a tank. So, unfortunately, Vladimir ended up building, Spirit Visage, itemizing against MR and kind of getting that healing as well. But it just did not work out. You can see how far in favor the matchup fell for the Ornn and just the jungle as well. Kane ended up building a lot of lethality items here, just snowballing completely off the early game, deciding to run away with it.
Hmm. And a little interesting to point out, I see Renekton opted it in to pick for the Black Cleaver alongside the Dev Stance rather than looking for the typical Bork build that you normally see now on from the Renektons. That makes his late game just a little bit stronger because of that. Uh, Melee champions do extra damage as opposed to being a ranged champion whenever you're autoing. So let's go ahead and go on to the next game. So we have Hidden Weave Village versus Divine Ascension Black.
Yeah, and this is
We
one of two ones in the platinum division for today. The other one being Bucky's Amusement Park versus Glacial Rising Eagles. But this was a pretty back and forth series for both teams. Now Hidden Weave Village ended up picking it up for a 2-1, but they did lose this first game here, and you can kind of see the pick ban was a lot of question marks for Hidden Weave Village. They rally in the Malphite. Didn't turn out too well. You can see Irelia going 2-8. They ended up giving away a lot of niche picks over to Divine Ascension Black that actually helped them pull out the victory. You can see, like the Victor, the Ivern, and the Malphite. Not picks that you see every day, but something that really worked out for Divine Ascension.
Yeah, I want to point out in the early game, for the side of Divine, it was let's see, the winner of this game was Hidden. Oh no, sorry, Divine Ascension Black, and they did a very excellent job at just turning this game around. We see around at this like 21-minute point, they managed to get ahead at taking some of these dragons. They managed to take the not the first dragon, but the second, and then the following dragons after that. That really helped them to start turning around their lead. In the beginning, we had Hidden Weave Village do an excellent job with their farming, but uh, and then even getting a couple kills early, getting the dragon early. But then once this late game began to roll in, uh, it Divine Ascension Black just managed to turn it around and really get their Zaya going with get their Zaya going, and along with the Victor and the Ivern, as you mentioned before.
And you can see the one big team fight around that Infernal Dragon that kind of swung the gold lead into Divine Ascension Black's favor. And after that, they really controlled the gold lead for the most part. And you can kind of attribute that just to the mid game difference between the two teams. Once Victor and Zaya kind of hit that 2 item mark, they get really, really strong compared to the Anivia Caitlyn, which need just a little bit more time to come online. Their composition of Hidden Weave Village is very reliant on having that Irelia Mumu get ahead early and kind of carry them through the mid game, not taking too many risks, and then starting to scale up later once the Nivea Caitlyn hit their 3 items, and Nivea gets her items fully stacked as well, both the Roa and Seraph's Embrace. But they took that big risk at the dragon, and it just did not pay off.
And we still see that Anivia was not able to reach that 3 item breakpoint that you mentioned, only at the 2 items, Seraphs and Rod, and looking to either build Liandry's or the Morelos. But I believe uh, Liandry's makes a little more sense here than Morelos.
Yeah, then we move on to the second game, which was very, very close. You can see the gold lead swinging back and forth for most of the game, and then actually a pretty big throw towards the end gave the Baron over to Hidden Weave Village and let them close out the game. But we can see that Divine Ascension ran it back with the Zaya, but changed out pretty much all of their other picks that led them to success. And then Hidden Weave Village is picking a lot of comfort picks. You can see them having a Nivea again. They actually picked the Shyvana jungle this time. And it just ended up working out for them as they scaled towards the later game. You can see the big throw that led into the Hidden Weave Village win is about where Nivea hits her breakpoint, right? You can see that she has 4 items, going to be exceptionally strong. Having the Abyssal Mask as well, going to give some extra survivability. You have the Shyvana actually completing both the Void Staff and the Banshees later in the game to kind of help combat the innate tankiness and CC that the enemy composition has.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. All right, I like this the Shyvana pick. It's not really something you don't really see normally. I know last week, you and Vid mentioned about the Shyvana going AP, which is I like the change to it, or her new meta build really that she really goes AP rather than going for the usual on hit build because it just works out a lot more better and it's more fun.
Yeah, definitely a lot more fun. Kind of gives you that fire breathing dragon gameplay that we all desire. It's pretty fun to just kind of shoot the fire at the enemy and their health bar goes burr. But then you move on to the third game, and that one was very, very one-sided for Hidden Weave Village. You see that they ran it back with the Fiora, actually picked up the Wukong jungle this time, and just all across the board, their players is doing well. You can see the one big dragon fight that broke it open. At that point, they commanded the gold lead. Very difficult for the composition of Divine Ascension Black to come back. They had a lot of pick options, but the problem is their Olaf is very reliant on being able to run down the enemy team, but just so much survivability on the side of Hidden Weave Village, especially through the Taric. Having a tankier jungle mid as well as the Zaya, Feather Storm allows you to kind of just survive through that Olaf initial engage with the Ragnarok, and then re-engage later.
hmm Uh, I do want to point out how the Wukong 9-1 and 9 Wukong feels very strong even after so many nerfs or some nerfs to him, and he still feels really really strong as just a really good bruiser with the Death Stance alongside a Cinderhulk because his ultimate does damage based on your mat's health. Might be bonus health. I can't exactly remember. And then Fiora popping off really well at the 10 as 10-2. So like you said, it was a stomp by Hidden Weave Village. So congrats to them.
Yeah,
And
so then we
let's
move
go
on to
ahead
our
and move
last
on
series.
to Bucky's Abusement Park versus Glacial Horizon Eagles.
Yeah, and we can see in this first one a lot of it's an interesting composition that Bucky's abusement park has pulled out here. You have the Singed and Scion, as well as the Kindred. So it's very much kind of a do damage comp, having the Sin, Scion, and Braum play Peel and Distract, while Kindred and Kai'Sa lay out the damage. You can see how successful it was as well. A lot of damage and gold being funneled into the jungle and ADC for Bucky's Abusement Park, and into the composition of Glacial Rising Eagles, having that 2 tank, the Zac and the Ornn. Once you have that Kai'Sa Kindred, you can actually cut through a lot of that. As you can see here, Zac just did not have a good game, went 2-8, and wasn't able to provide that big front line for his team.
They do have the Yumi to try to help with their damage, having a too tanky front line, and then having the Yumi on top of your carry Ezreal or Talia in order to really help round out your damage to push through the teams. But it looks like having Kai'Sa and Kindred, just really good tank melters, and then Singe, Scion, and Braum, all pretty good at either sticking on top of their carries or just defending Kai'Sa and Kindred away from just getting bursted down by the Ezreal or Talia.
Yeah, and this one was a relatively close game. You can see that the kill score is 24-22. It just seemed like some of those team fights just went slightly in favor of Bucky's Amusement Park, and they were able to pull out the win. It ended up going pretty late, 36 minutes. Two Barons went down over to Bucky's Amusement Park. They were just able to take down all the towers off that. You can see zero towers for Glacial Rising Eagles. They're definitely having some trouble sieging this game. And with the Tulia Ezreal, it shouldn't be too hard. The problem is there's just so much raw engage from the side of Bucky's Amusement Park that you have to be very, very careful.
Hmm. So let's go ahead and look at game two, where it looks like Glacial Rising Eagles was able to pull out a win.
Yeah, you can see that
So
very early they ended up picking up the gold lead off some skirmishes, off just some better farm. They ended up getting almost all the objectives in terms of neutral objectives rather than towers this game. And it was almost a complete stop from Glacial Rising Eagles. And at this point in the series, you have to ask, like, how is Bucky's Amusement Park going to be able to come back from this? Because they drafted a very different composition than they did in game one. And, that seems like kind of a cheese composition, but at the same time, they ran it back with the Scion mid, having the Kaisa again, actually taking the Yumi away. So that way, um, Glacial Rising couldn't take that Yumi. But the Jax in the top lane just really struggled in this game, especially into the Ornn, who had a very successful game, 7-0 and 7, getting pretty far in the late game.
yeah, and a little to my surprise, they decided to draft this team, which is a lot of, you have three people that does a lot of AD damage, and then you're just relying on Kai'Sa to do a lot of your, magic damage in order to block it out. But because, it's just the Kai'Sa you really need to worry about. Ornn really itemizes heavy AD, even a Thornmail where Kai'Sa kind of needs to auto attack a lot, and then just relied on Ari and Aphelios to really do the damage, since Kaisa didn't really come out of lane with too many kills, or really was any far ahead against Aphelios and Soraka bot lane. So uh, the drafting for the side of Bucky's Amusement Park was a little bit questionable for me. The Yumi is nice and all, but the having Kaisa really be the main part of your damage. They do have the Jats, which is a good late game split pusher, but he isn't necessarily the same sort of damage component that Kindred brings to the table.
So then we move to the third game, and this one, it wasn't as much of a stomp as game two, but it definitely was in favor of Bucky's Amusement Park. He drafted, it was a very different style. They ran it back with the Jacks, kind of gave their top laner a second chance, but they drafted the utility mid laner again through the Morgana, and they had the early game Elise into Sejuani, which it's a very difficult matchup for Sejuani if you're going to try to play passive in the early game because Elise just outpaces you so much. We can see how far ahead the Elise started snowballing early in the game, end up taking the early dragon and still not falling behind in terms of gold, and then starting to win some of those early skirmishes as Sejuani trying to play the other side of the bat but still unsuccessful. And then as we move towards those later team fights, it just completely went in favor of Bucky's Amusement Park. A lot of playmaking from the Rakan, as well as having that spell shield on him, makes it very difficult to be able to thwart that engage and actually prevent a lot of that. And you can see there's not a ton of peel from the side of Glacial Rising Eagles in their composition. They actually draft the Sivir. And they just don't have a ton of damage in the mid game where it all fell apart for them.
Yeah, they drafted a lot more damage this game from both sides. Uh, Bucky's Amusement Park having that Zaya alongside of Morgana doing a little bit of magic damage in the least for the strong early game, similar to Rek'Sai, but can do it in a little bit different formats with those long range uh, stuns. Yeah, they're stuns, not snares. Uh, for these pretty powerful ganks in order to get your team ahead. Jax really did an excellent job performing. His early game was a little weak, getting solo killed by the yeah, I believe it was solo kill by the Akali, but then he was able to pick it back up with a return kill onto them, and then just uh, snowball into that 8-3 lead as well as the Zaya being able to just really kind of get funneled thanks to this utility mid laner and the support Rakan.
And you can kind of see the team identity of Bucky's amusement park start to come out. You can they're gonna play not through their mid at all. They're gonna play through their jungle and ADC primarily. And if their top lane gets ahead, then that's a big plus. So when you're playing against Bucky's amusement park, you have to see, do you want to match them blow for blow where they're going to play through, or do you want to try to target the mid lane, try to target where their weaker utility player is, and kind of forcing it down mid. And you can see here with the Silas pick, it was pretty unsuccessful. Even taking Ignite wasn't very. They weren't able to kind of target the weak point of the composition of Bucky's amusement park, and they took the loss in game 3 for it.
Yeah, so congratulations to Bucky's Amusement Park. And you want to go ahead and get started on these diamond games as well?
Well, before we move on to the Diamond Division, let's kind of talk about how the standings for Platinum are shaking out as we move into Week 5, because this is the halfway point for the season, and only the top 4 teams are going to get to playoffs, and we can kind of see where these teams are starting to shake out. So, Return of the Millsticks towards the top of the standings, at the very top, actually, only dropping 1 game to GSM, all split so far. 2-0s against Hidden Weave Village, Bucky's Amusement Park, and Business Time. So very successful split so far from them. And then not too far behind are actually GSM and Bucky's Amusement Park, who are going to be tied. They have not played each other yet. I would have to check the schedule to see when they play each other. But it seems like those 2 teams are almost at a lock for playoffs. So Bucky's Amusement Park playing a lot of the weaker teams in the standings, and GSM kind of playing, they haven't played Divine Ascension Black yet. They've played Business Time, playing both MG Blaze and Glacial Rising Eagles towards the middle of the standings. So kind of, they're both cementing themselves towards the top of the standings. And then you have in third place, Soul Possession is MG Blaze 2-2, going 1-2 against Glacial Rising Eagles in week 1. And then having 2 successful weeks, followed by a 2-0 this week by I'm sorry, a 0-2 this week against GSM. So it's very difficult for them to kind of challenge the top spots, as you can see. They still have to play Bucky's Amusement Park, still have to play Return of the Millsticks, and that will really, I guess, cement them in playoffs if they are looking to get in the playoffs. They have to try to take the match off of Bucky's Amusement Park, if not Return of the Millsticks, and it will be very difficult for them to do so. So that's kind of my picks for the top 4 playoffs. Glacial Rising Eagles, they have put up some pretty competitive matches against everybody. They're 1-2 for the past 3 weeks in a row, just going 1-2 every single series. Pretty unfortunate they aren't able to close it out, but they just don't show enough adaptation for me to actually believe for them to get it into playoffs.
Yeah. I haven't really seen too much of this GRLCS summer splashdown split, but I have seen Return of Millicents and GSM both play. GSM playing very typical with their very strong late game scaling comms, and then Return of Millicents with their uh, them doing an excellent job being able to perform in the early and as well as the late game. In both cases, where they could see some of these 15-minute games, or we can see some of these 40-minute games, both of them. Return Millicents really doing an excellent job at coming out on top. So there's no contest, in my mind, at least for that so far. But I haven't really seen too much of the other teams personally. So uh, for me, it's really up for grabs, but I'm really rooting for Return Militates here to see if they'll be able to pull out just a perfect score in order at the end of this
Yeah, and between GSM and Bucky's Amusement Park, it is pretty close between the 2 teams, it looks like. But GSM are the fan favorites. They have historically been in the league for longer. There's a lot of question marks for Bucky's Amusement Park. And we just don't know them as well, but they could definitely challenge GSM for second place coming out of the round robin. And they were actually to if they were to get second place, then that would be really good for them because they could actually get side selection in playoffs, probably playing GSM again if they were the second and third place respectively. And even if it was flip flop, they would be playing GSM. So these are kind of their rivals going into the playoffs. And if they either team could somehow take a take away that first place spot from Return of the Middlesticks, then playoffs would definitely be shaken up. Return of the Middlesticks or GSM, where Bucky's Amusement Park, two of those three might go in the first round, and that fourth seed for playoffs is going to have a tough time because it seems like there's definitely a drop off after that third place in the Platinum division. Oh, he left. All right. Okay, so the stream can still hear me, so I guess I'll go by myself. RexGoDragon, I must have disconnected, but we're still running the stream from Vid's computer remotely. So I guess we'll just move on to Diamond now. So Diamond, we only have 2 matches to report on this week. Match of the week is Stuck Gaming versus question mark XD. Since I'm not on, I can't control Vid's computer. It's actually just RexGoDragon. So I'll just be kind of talking about the games, talking about how they shaped out. You guys will just have to listen and not have any pretty graphics for the screen. But so in game one, it was a 2-1 victory for Stuck Gaming. Game one actually went to question mark XD. Now this week they subbed their jungler. It was Doc subbing for it's Ching or something. Let me think. I'll pull up my notes. It's Ching Bear. So they subbed their jungler, and Doc is a pretty significant part of the team for question mark XD, and especially going into this very very important match against Stuck Gaming. I was very skeptical about how well he would perform. But you can see in this game one, I'm sorry, you guys can't see. He went 10-1 in this 10-1-9 on Graves and versus a 1-7 Italy in game one. So it was a complete stomp all across the board. All members of question mark XD playing well. Yeah, all sorry. I just read a message from RexGoDragon. He is messing up with Discord, but he can still control the computer. So probably pulling up graphics for you guys to look at right now. I'm not looking at the stream, so I can't really tell. But complete stomp from question mark XD all around. It's very surprising to see Stuck Gaming kind of fall in this way. They ended up picking the Senna Nautilus bot lane, and it just did not work out for them. It was a Blitzcrank counter pick for question mark XD. It was an Ezreal Blitzcrank lane, which overall doesn't do that too much damage. It's not one of those picks where it's like, oh, I picked this lane, it's kind of over into the Senna Nautilus. And it was just pretty well played all around by question mark XD, playing through their jungler very surprisingly in the early game and shutting down that Nidalee. The bright spot for Stuck Gaming was parry difference in the top lane, playing the Aatrox. He went 5-5-1. But he unfortunately just wasn't able to get things rolling for his team. The rest of the map falling too far behind. There was definitely a lot of scaling on the side of on Stuck Gaming. They had both Malzahar and Senna as their carries, and then the Aatrox Nidalee on the top side. Very reliant on those two to kind of get them ahead early and kind of snowball things for them. But Nidalee starting to fall behind compared to the sub jungler for question mark XD was a big yikes in the early game and ended up costing them quite a bit. Now we move on to the second game, and you can see that some of those picks have switched around. So yeah, the Volibear in the top lane for parry difference. He's finally pulling it out. I remember scouting him. I believe it was last week, and he was playing a ton of Volibear. It's good to see him, kind of pulling it out against the Mordekaiser for the top laner of question mark XD as well. Now you can see Rek'Sai, Orianna, Varus, Nami to finish out the composition of Stuck Gaming, and then it was Mordekaiser, Trundle, Ari, Ashe, and Zyra for question mark XD. So bringing back some of that season 4 vibe, that Ashe Zyra lane that didn't turn out too effectively this game. The Varus Nami just really, really strong synergy in lane, and having that Rek'Sai to couple with it sets up for some really strong gigs. And Ashe Zyra is one of those lanes that are very mobile, very vulnerable early. You can see that the Rek'Sai kind of took advantage of that early. Moving into the later part of the game, uh, they were able to start to get ahead in team fights, start to pick up some of these other objectives. But a lot of the early game, those 2 dragons especially, went over to question mark XD. And it was a relatively close game up until, about the 20-minute mark where the gold lead started to slowly fall in favor of Stuck Gaming. And they just ended up closing out with a couple of big team fights. It seemed like after the 20-minute mark, Stuck Gaming was, I'm sorry, question mark XD was really struggling to find their place in this match, and they started to just slowly bleed out. So putting their sub jungler on the Trundle in this game too just didn't seem to work out for them. They needed something a little bit more snowbally, something a little bit more commanding, and he started to fall behind. It was a lot of good team play from Stuck Gaming this game, having that Oriana Varus as your carries, and having that strong engage from the Volibear Rek'Sai is a really strong combo for Stuck Gaming. They are one of the best team fighting teams in the division, and it really shows through this competition composition. So then we moved to game three. This one was a pretty big stomp in favor of Stuck Gaming. You can see the picks: Oren Gragas, Yasuo, Aphelios, Braum for question mark XD. And then on the red side, Stuck Gaming has Set, Rek'Sai, Ari, Misfortune, Morgana. So very similar kind of composition with the double engage from the top side for Stuck Gaming. That's really where they find themselves most successful a lot of the time. They have that utility pick in the support, and this is kind of just cookie cutter composition for Stuck Gaming, and they were able to play very well into the composition of question mark XD, the Gragas Yasuo being the mid jungle pairing for question mark XD. And it was just very difficult for them to get into the game. You can see a really big team fight early, or I guess a skirmish around the 4 minute mark. 3 kills over to Stuck Gaming, and at that point, they kind of just started to roll over. They kept the gold lead for quite a while, and then the gold lead just started to shift in their favor quite a bit. You can see a big Baron fight really through the game in their favor. They're having a little bit of difficulty closing out. They ended up getting 2 inhibitors off of that Baron siege, but after that, it was pretty much lights out for Stuck Gaming. So I would like to see this rematch later in playoffs with Doc instead of Ching Bear as their sub jungler. Although Ching Bear performed very well in game one of the series, no, I would like to say he underperformed a bit in the second 2 games. I'm sorry, the following 2 games. The draft as well for first question mark XD, having that Gragas Yasuo, and especially having Gragas as your only AP source is very difficult into the set Rek'Sai, and you have to have a lot of sustained damage. And Gragas Yasuo is one of those combos that you have to burst someone, and you have to burst someone very early, and Morgana's there to counter a lot of that. You putting that spell shield on anybody and actually peeling the Gragas Yasuo very well, using the soul shackles, using the binding. Very great pick from Stuck Gaming, be able to get that Morgana for Lord Reeves here, and play pretty well into Stuck Gaming. But congratulations on cementing first and being undefeated so far. They still have, I believe, 2 or 3 more opponents. I can't remember if they already had their bye or not. But Stuck Gaming looking like the clear contender for first place in the Diamond Division. Now we move into our second game. It's going to be GSM versus Sensei Squad. GSM really struggling in the first half of the split. I believe they are 1-3. Let me double check on that. Yeah, they were 1-2 going into this week 4 match playing against Sensei Squad. So they're right there at the bottom of the standings, along with Sensei Squad. But now Sensei Squad losing against GSM, they are the clear last place, and GSM kind of creating that separation towards the bottom of the standings. But GSM, if they were to miss playoffs here, it would be honestly it would be a pretty big question mark. The roster of GSM having a lot of success in the past, always making playoffs. They haven't changed a lot of the pieces. And if GSM were somehow miss playoffs to split after just adding a few extra teams, even it was 7 teams now this split because return of the tree line dropped out pretty early. It would put up a lot of questions, but they do have, I believe, 2 more matches against return of the middle stakes, which is competing with them for that playoff spot, and then one other team, if I can think of it, Divine Ascension White. So they have those 2 matches. I believe that they can beat Divine Ascension White. Divine Ascension White at the bottom of the standings as well, right next to Sensei Squad. And it comes down to the match against Return of the Mill Stakes. And at this point, they are kind of in control of their own destiny. It's they have the head-to-head over MG Eclipse. It's probably likely that they get that 4th seed spot if they can beat Return of the Millsticks and then get that 3rd seed spot moving in the playoffs. But let's go ahead and do a quick recap of the games. Game 1, you can see the Volibear jungle picked up for Sensei Squad, and it's just another game of jungle difference. And we kind of talked about that last week, where we were questioning the jungler for Sensei Squad a lot. Formerly Water Bear, now being replaced by, I have no idea, but actually, hold on, I have his name somewhere. I take it back. I don't have his name anywhere. I had the rosters pulled up last week, so I could talk about them a little bit, but this week I am very ill prepared. But the Volibear being picked up for the jungler Sensei Squad, and we have a lot of questions for him because he fell very, very far behind in the match against, I believe it was Return of the Middle Sticks, where Tendy just kind of rolled over him every single game. And now playing against Shiny Bidoof, who is also a strong jungler. You know, he's nothing to laugh at in the slightest. And Shiny Bidoof just kind of pairing well with the Yasuo this time, and a successful Gragas Yasuo composition for GSM. You can see they picked the Victor top to have that AP source of damage. I believe that, yeah, GSM submitted the same game twice, so I won't be able to preview the other match. So this is the only match we get to see from them, but it was a pretty successful game for them overall. A lot of big team fights they ended up throwing, or the Baron Sneak from Sensei Squad let them stay in the game just a little bit longer, but unfortunately they lost a pretty big team fight afterwards, and they just got rolled for the rest of the game. We can look at the Diamond standings just a little bit now. We won't be covering Divine Ascension White or MG Eclipse because they turned in their post-match submission form late, so we won't be able to cover them, but MG Eclipse did pick up the win over Divine Ascension White, and I don't know if it was a 2-0 or 2-1. But at the very top of the standings, we have Stuck Gaming, who is not undefeated this split in terms of games, but in terms of matches, yes, they beat teams all at the top standings, kind of cementing themselves as a clear first, then followed by XD, who has beaten Squad, GSM, and lost to Stuck Gaming. They had the bye in week 2 against the return of the Tree Line, so they are going to be competing alongside Return of the Middle Sticks and MG Eclipse and GSM for those last 3 playoff spots. Then towards the bottom, you have Divine Ascension White and Sensei Squad. At this point, I believe that Divine Ascension White and Sensei Squad are actually locked out of playoffs. Don't quote me on that, but historically in the GRLCS, once you lose those first 3 weeks in such a small group, so it's only 7 teams. Even if you win out, you're not in control of your own destiny at that point, since you've especially lost against some of the head-to-heads against your direct competitors. Sensei Squad still has their bye week. They're going to be playing Stuck Gaming as well, which we can mark off as a loss, and then playing against Divine Ascension White for their other game. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough road for Sensei Squad. I don't believe that they win in the slightest. So Sensei Squad, we can kind of count out for the split. Divine Ascension White, even if they win against GSM Sensei Squad, they might be able to spoil playoffs for GSM, but I don't believe that they actually make playoffs with a 2-3 score line. Yeah, and they still have to play XD as well. So pretty tough schedule for them coming up. But if they can somehow pick up the next 3 wins, then they definitely make playoffs. They'll beat out GSM for it, I believe. But it's pretty difficult for them. My picks for the playoffs, now that we're kind of at that halfway point, is Stuck Gaming for your first seed. I believe that Return the Millsticks might beat out XD for the second seed. It's kind of a hot take. Return of the Millsticks, I just believe off of their roster strength alone, their attendees in the jungle might be able to outskill Doc, I believe, and just a lot of mechanical expression, having liposuction lane back on the Diamond Division roster, and a lot of strong macro from Return of the Middlesticks. And after their loss in the match against Tech Game this week, I'm kind of not as hopeful for them. They've lost a lot of momentum coming into their match against Return of the Middlesticks. So it's going to be difficult for them to overcome that, but momentum's whatever in the GRLCS, am I right? So I believe that Return of the Middlesticks will take second seed, XD will take third seed, and then I'm hopeful for GSM. to get that 4th seed. But again, they have played against the top 2 teams in the division. If Return of the Middle Sticks loses against them, then they might fall a little bit. Question mark XD might pick up that 2nd seed. But we'll have to see how the rest of the split shakes out. Now, I don't know if we can run clip of the week. I think RexGoDragon said he can hear me. So if you can hear me, it is that time for clip of the week. You're gonna run up on the Discord and kind of see the clips that were submitted this week. It's still my 2nd week doing this, still relatively new, but I believe that's just how it's done. And there weren't a ton of clips submitted this week, as far as I'm concerned. All right, he messaged me. Where do I find this? It's in the GRLCS Discord under game clips. If you cannot see it, then we'll go ahead and sign off on the podcast today. But we'll just wait a little bit while RexGoDragon tries to find those game clips that were submitted. He found a couple. All right, if you can pull those up on the stream for everybody to see, all our 9 whole viewers, then they can kind of check out what the community has submitted this week for clip of the week. I guess since I'm the only one that can be heard on the stream, that means I will be voting and designating clip of the week. Since Vid is not here right now, and RexGoDragon has disconnected from the Discord. But it doesn't look like RexGoDragon is able to do it. Otherwise, he would have done it by now, I want to say. Because we can't see it on the screen. We're still looking at his browser capture. Unless he changes it to window capture or changes it to the Discord, you can just play all of them. I think he's trying to pull it up right now. I can see him trying to get the slobs. Now we can see everything. Here we go. All right, here's the Discord. So starting this week, or I guess from the last week, so it would be, I believe, Sunday. So we can see some of these clips. Is that the entire clip? Okay, yeah, just Nautilus running at the beginning of the game. I'm not too entertained by that one, but good submission nonetheless. Thank you, Black Salt, for the meme, because I believe Return of the Middle Sticks we're talking about speed running the Platinum Division, but it's a pretty good title, at least for the submission. Is that the only one that we have this week? I feel like there are others clips. We have Return of the Mill Sticks versus Business Time from VBon, if we can pull that one up. And then an Echo solo kill from Miguel Padilla on the Return of the Mill Sticks. Ooh, a lot of disrespect there from Bon Voyage. Not really thinking that X-Craze would go in there and all in under the turret, but pretty good all together. Now we're looking at the next clip. Pew pew. These are the only... Oh wait, there's one more clip. After this, we have the VBon clip. Alright, and now the last clip. VBon, holy moly, he's so tanky right here. Oh my goodness, this is absolutely disgusting. I mean, to be fair, he's really far ahead. We saw how big his scoreline was in this game, but he's just so tanky. All this CC, and he might still get away, honestly. He's turning this. Wow. This is something else, but pretty big turnaround there. In terms of clip of the week between those, I would choose the X Craze solo kill. I think it looked pretty enough. It was a tower dive as well. I'm a big fan. So I don't have the authority to make it clip of the week officially, but we will talk to the admins, and congratulations X Craze to submitting a clip of the week. But in in terms of podcasts, I think that's it for this week. Signing off on week 4 of the GRLCS Summer Splashdown. I am Darren Doulos Win here with, or was here with Austin RexGoDragon Win before he disconnected from the Discord. But thank you very much for tuning in, everybody, and good night.